That famous World of Light intro cutscene is fantastic, isn't it? Not only is it cool, and not only does it get the story moving, but also, by taking out all these powerful heroes, it establishes Galeem as the titanic threat that any good villain should be. For it to be truly threatening, though, it should be taking out those heroes when they're at their peak, and you know what? I think some of those escape attempts might have been a bit gift wrapped. So today what we're going to do is we're going to look through every character's canon appearances and check out just how good or bad their World of Light escape attempts actually were. Were they being stupid? Could they have gotten away? Should they have gotten away? In some cases, the answer ended up being surprising. Let's get into it. So I've got kind of a behind the scenes studio tour segment today because I've worked with a lot of companies over the years. There aren't many like FlexiSpot where I can honestly say they've permanently altered my lifestyle for the better. When FlexiSpot asked me if I'd like to check out their E6 standing desk, I absolutely jumped at the chance because the thing is, this position you see me in here, it's where I'm in when I'm recording, when I'm editing, when I'm getting footage. So basically, it's where I spend my day. And I feel it, especially because I tend to sit with more weight on one side, and that hip actually gets a bit numb in my day-to-day life sometimes. And the thing is, I've tried to be a standing desk guy before, but I made the mistake of copping out for one of those, like, you know, horrible hand-lifted spring mount things that can barely hold any weight. With FlexiSpot's E6, on the other hand, look at this. I've got my entire YouTube lineup on here. I got my consoles back there. I got my Stream Decks, keyboard, monitor, other monitor, whole computer, but because the E6's load capacity is over 300 pounds, that is never going to not be satisfying. I'm recording this while I'm still in the middle of putting the office back together. I decided to just tear everything apart and rearrange it. This is my old desk. It's where I used to just sit. I'm gonna put so much fun stuff on there, but I've already had good time to use it. Done some writing, done some editing, done some gaming. What are you here for? And oh my god, I already don't think I could go back. I feel more energized. My back feels better. And of course, I still plan to sit sometimes, so it's really easy to get back to. When I first got the desk, I thought it would just go up and down. It actually has memory settings, so it'll go to the exact height that you want every time. You can find FlexiSpot at my link below, and if you use it, you're getting a sick desk or one of their other products and helping the channel out at the same time. Thank you. So the obvious ones first, we have Kirby, who made it. That also actually does make sense when you look at how warp stars are used in the Kirby games. Yes, Sakurai obviously picked his baby, but it's a good fit. We also have Sephiroth, of course, because escape attempt. And then all these characters that didn't make it on screen because they're DLC or just doing something too boring. We see the entire squad on the cliff face and in game, so they definitely got wiped out. It's interesting to think about what they'd be doing to try and survive, right? Maybe Mario was caping? Did Incineroar try and tank the blast? Did Mr. Game & Watch pull his bucket out? Did Little Mac try and punch it? I don't know, it's a cool thought experiment. If you got any good ideas for characters, leave them in the comments. As for what we actually do get to see though, heading in, there's a lot of bravado, everyone's feeling pretty good about themselves. Then things start escalating, and the first one to see this is not about to go down well is Shulk. Now, Shulk, if I understand my Xenoblade lore right, and please say I do, I've spent so much time researching this, absolutely had no chance of escaping. His foresight ability does let him see into the future, but he still has to dodge whatever's coming his way as a human. So if he was surrounded by, say, 500 people all chucking baseballs at him at the same time, yeah, he'd know he's about to get hit, but he's still gonna get hit. It doesn't really matter how fast you are if there's just nowhere to go. Replace 500 baseballs with giant evaporating beams of light, and I think you get the picture. He's screwed. And no, we are not considering the contractually obligated godlike state every JRPG protagonist has to ascend to at some point. He's clearly not there yet. That said, this dude had several seconds to say, "Oh my god, guys, we can't beat this, run away," and he just stands there gawking. And there are some instances where I think that actually potentially mattered. Shulk goes in Shulk tier all the way at the bottom. Unfortunately, we never get to see Shulk suffer the consequences of his own actions. He's vaporized off screen. The first character who actually directly interacts with Galeem is Link. So this is the Breath of the Wild incarnation of Link, and like with many incarnations, he wields the Hylian shield. Now, this is not the strongest version of it that's ever existed in Zelda. You can actually break it if it takes enough force, but it's still by far the most durable shield, and you can see very clearly that it is actually tanking the hits well. The big problem here actually stems from Link himself. Now, this first blast that he takes, he's reasonably well braced against it, although he's still only using one hand. He could definitely have taken that better. And the reason here is because he wants to keep his sword hand free to slash at not even the beams. He just kind of slashes nothing. That's not great. Now, you can't really blame him for following his ancestral memory. Generally speaking, in Breath of the Wild, you're not slashing attacks back at enemies so much, but in some Zelda games, that's a huge thing. In Breath of the Wild, though, you rely on your shield, and Link should probably have followed the playbook a little closer this time, because what happens after the slash? He's totally off balance. He takes this next hit here, and there's a bit of animation trickery, frankly. He shouldn't have even had that happen. This is not an animation review video. I have plenty of those if you want them. The implication is the same trickery or no trickery, though. He takes the second blast, but he's knocked completely off balance by it. He's not braced at all. And then he gets wiped out. So if Link had done the smart thing and just hunkered down behind his shield to try and weather the storm, he definitely would have held out longer. Would he have escaped? Not like that, no. Because things start getting complicated here. Galeem just doesn't attack the cliffside. It doesn't just attack the planet. It evaporates the entire universe. So to escape it, you need to escape the universe, which actually turns out to be a surprisingly common ability in video games, including The Legend of Zelda. There are a number of alternate dimensions. The Sacred Realm is an obvious one. The thing is, though, in Zelda games, you can't just, like, flip a switch and be in there, and in Breath of the Wild, you definitely can't. This particular Link can also teleport using the Sheikah Slate, but there's no indication he wouldn't just have to come right back down somewhere not too far away. So Link was always doomed, but even in that context, his strategy definitely could have been smarter. And right beside him is Samus. Because of Samus's power suit and her Chozo DNA, she is far stronger and more agile than your average person, but if we're going by the 500 baseballs theory, she has absolutely no chance of getting out of the way. Shulk can't, and he has literal precognition, so if it won't work for him, it won't work for her. So in that case, standing her ground is probably her best bet. Now, Samus is firing at the beams here, and again, you can't really blame her for that. That is a thing in Metroid, take out your enemy's projectiles. The smarter thing to do would actually be to fire directly at Galeem. After all, it's not completely indestructible, the game is beatable, but I think asking her to gauge that in the moment is probably a stretch. There is also some alternate dimension travel stuff in Metroid, but not that's easily accessible on a cliffside like this. So Samus was still doomed, but did put up a better fight than Link did. So then Zelda steps up to the plate. This is Nehru's love that she's summoning here, which doesn't totally line up with how it appears in Zelda. It's taken from Ocarina of Time, but this incarnation of Zelda is from A Link Between Worlds. But you know what? It's all the same goddess in that universe, so I think we can just reference Ocarina. It's actually primarily used by Link in that game, so we can get a decent sense of how it works, and it's very protective, but not infallible. It protects you from damage, but doesn't protect you from, say, being knocked down a pit, and also, it's only available for so long. Still though, I'm not really all that sure she had a better option. The Link Between Worlds timeline has essentially the same caveats as Breath of the Wild. There is teleportation, and there are alternate dimensions, but again, they're not really the kinds of things she can just instantly pull out as a trump card. I think Zelda goes in the same tier as Samus, because here's the thing, if I'm facing down a death ray and I have the option to pull out a goddess-granted force field to protect myself, I'm probably gonna pull the trigger on that. On the topic of force fields, beside her, we have Mewtwo. When I first saw this trailer, I thought it was just using Confusion, its reflector move, which, you know, makes sense. But no, if you look at it, this is actually a proper force field, which isn't really something that he can do in Smash, but is very heavily inspired by the show. Now, it's not shocking that this didn't work. The force field is very powerful in Pokemon lore, but you know, it's blocking stuff like fire blasts and leaf blades, and even then, Mewtwo is a very long way from invincible. There were definitely some better options Mewtwo could have used here if, I don't know, Shulk had turned around and said, hey, Mewtwo, you can't block this, because Mewtwo is first off just extraordinarily fast. I know when Smash Bracket did their Mewtwo vs Sephiroth video, they estimated his speed at over 1,000 miles per hour, but in any case, you can just look at any appearance of his and go, yeah, he's fast. So if Mewtwo had decided to book it instead, he would have made it a lot further, but ultimately, I think his fate would have been the same. The thing is, he is shown going to the edge of space, but it's also treated as a hostile environment for him. He certainly can't flee throughout the cosmos or anything like that. So that's already enough to put him down in this tier alongside Link, but there's actually more to it. Remember, to escape Galeem, you need to be able to escape the universe, and it looks like Mewtwo actually probably can do that. The most direct reference to this comes from Pokemon Ranger, where Mewtwo just straight up picks a person up, puts them into a pocket dimension, and then drops them back out. It's a very clear-cut, open and shut case. There's no ambiguity. That's just what he's doing. Now, the only point of contention here is there are multiple Mewtwo's out there, so can they all do this pocket dimension thing? Look, we're diving real deep into some real messy lore, and they're not all shown on stage doing that, but I think it's a reasonable guess to say they can. So Mewtwo goes into the could have escaped tier. In fact, I'd go as far as to say Mewtwo might have been able to help everyone escape if, I don't know, Shulk. After that, we have the infamous Sonic-Pikachu pairing. So I could go in and try to make a case for just how fast Sonic actually is, but you know what? Sonic can outrun these beams. Can we just agree on that? It's such a prominent problem that the developers actually had to come up with a concrete example for why he didn't. He was held back by Pikachu. Ultimately though, would it have mattered? Sonic could get to the other side of the planet in a flash, but would that help him escape Galeem when Galeem can destroy the entire universe? And you know what? I think it would. Sonic can turn into Super Sonic, who unlike Mewtwo, can absolutely go into space, so you can just assume anywhere Sonic needs to be, he can be. And that matters here because Sonic does concretely have access to things that can warp between dimensions. And unlike some characters who might have similar tools but difficulty getting to them, we can just assume that's not a problem for Sonic. And he could also presumably take Pikachu with him. Now the problem, of course, is that Pikachu can't run nearly as fast as Sonic, but if they'd had just a couple seconds extra head start, if, for example, Shulk, but also Pikachu's not really pulling his own weight here. This is the most famous quick attack user in the entire Pokemon franchise after all. It can definitely move faster than this. He couldn't really have escaped by himself for too long, but if he'd just been able to reach Sonic, they likely would have both made it. So yep, down they go. It's obviously very noble of Sonic to try and let Pikachu catch up, but also he's an idiot. There's a good reason why every airline safety instructions always say put on your own oxygen mask before helping someone else. Hypoxia is no joke. If you get it, you can't help anyone. Eldritch laser beams are no joke. If they vaporize you, you can't unvaporize anyone. Then we have Bayonetta after this, and she's an interesting case. So Bayonetta dodges an attack using Bat Within here, but not Witch Time on top of that, which is kind of strange, especially because in Bayonetta 2 specifically, essentially every time you trigger Bat Within, you also go into Witch Time. What exactly Witch Time does in Bayonetta is left a little nebulous, but from what I could track down, it's less of a literal time stop and more of, for a moment, being able to perceive everything instantly and move very quickly. So we have the 500 baseballs thing going on again, but in this case, it's for a character who can move way faster than what's being thrown at her and can literally split her body into tiny pieces and reassemble it, so I think she could actually get out of the way. And again, the main way to trigger it is by dodging attacks using Bat Within, so it feels very strange that she's not going into it right here. You could make the case that maybe she is anyway and we just don't see it, but there's a distinctive particle effect, so I think the implication is no, she's not for some reason, which feels like a very nerfed version of the character. I think Bayonetta portrayed accurately as opposed to just getting her out of the way to tell the story, which, yes, I'm aware is what's actually happening with a lot of these. Could survive a lot longer, but the real question is, could she actually escape? And it's tricky with her. The world of Bayonetta is absolutely loaded with multiversal stuff and, you know, alternate dimension. She's been to Paradiso, she's been to Inferno, but I don't think she can just phase between worlds on a whim like that. Rodon, though, I believe can. He's confirmed to be able to freely travel back and forth between Inferno, and he can also summon portals that take you to the gates of hell. And again, it is a bit ambiguous exactly what that place is in Bayonetta, but it's pretty strongly implied to be more than just a bar. It could be part of Inferno or its own pocket dimension. In Dante's Inferno, the gates of hell is the place in between. And putting all of that together, I do think it's reasonable to say that unnerfed canon Bayonetta could have gotten away from the initial blast using Bat Within and Witch Time, and then escaped into one of Rodon's portals. Yeah, that's good enough for me. She should have made it. Then we get to Pokemon Trainer and Bowser. This is cute. It was never going to work, but it's cute. Along with Bowser's Fire Breath, we have Charizard using Flamethrower, Ivysaur using Solar Beam, and Squirtle using what I believe is Hydro Pump. It's funny that it's just a little bit off from Triple Finish, their final smash where Charizard uses Fire Blast instead, but I get they wanted the cool visual of Charizard and Bowser breathing fire together. Just as a side note, some sources I found say this is Triple Finish. No, there's no way. Fire Blast is an extremely recognizable move in Pokemon. Because Ivysaur has way more range with Solar Beam, it probably should have been aiming at Galeem, but you know, dramatic beam clashes and blocks are a thing in Pokemon, and sometimes Bowser has much more impressive abilities, but that's super inconsistent. Overall, these were always going to be very weak attempts. In both series, you can only really conclude that elemental attacks like this are less dangerous than their real-world counterparts would be, if anything. Yeah, they tried. See, Captain Falcon knows what's up. Running away is definitely the smart play here. The problem is that on top of needing a few more seconds, the Blue Falcon is fast, it's very fast, but it's still in the somewhat believable realm of fast, and what's he gonna do, drive off the planet? He was always doomed, but he had the right idea. Next up is Lucario. Now, while Lucario does disappear from the screen for a moment, as far as I could find, he's never actually directly implicated as being able to teleport. This is just a visual representation for him moving extremely fast with Double Team. I'm fairly sure that's supposed to be the case because this pose he ends up in here is very similar to what he does in-game. In a lot of ways, Lucario is actually somewhat similar to Shulk canon-wise. It's got precognition, it's got dodging ability. Could it also see the same future Shulk was seeing? Does it deserve the same kind of flack? Maybe, but the aura tap-in thing does fluctuate at different times, and we're never actually directly shown that it knows what's coming, so what am I gonna do? 500 baseball strikes again. And he's of course joined by Greninja. Okay, so I know there's nothing Greninja could actually have done to protect Lucario here. This beam definitely would have taken them both out, but still, man, this is cold. Far worse though, it's also just incredibly ineffective. Yeah, jump way up into the air and do nothing else. Be a sitting duck. You have the ability to jet yourself around with water. You have Substitute. This is warranted if anything. You're not even trying. Here we have the Inklings. Yeah, this obviously was never really going to do much, but if they were living under the assumption that blowing the cliff face up wasn't something these beams could do, you can understand their logic. My comments have taught me some pretty wild things about Splatoon lore over the years that I don't really want to dive deep into here. Suffice to say that even if they could transport their souls to a different location somehow, nothing would get them off the planet. They did what they could. Unlike with Captain Falcon, Falco actually does make it into his R-Wing. Now, there is dimensional travel in Star Fox. You have Out of This Dimension from the original game, and there's also the Warp Zone in Star Fox 64. And R-Wings are also capable of going extraordinarily fast. The problem is they can't do it all the time. They need to access warp gates, which are out in space. And even with an extra few seconds of leeway, I have to conclude based on what we see on screen, the Falco had no chance of making it to one. Moving on to Pit, Dark Pit, and Palutena. So Pit always gets his power of flight supplied by Palutena. Dark Pit typically doesn't, but you can tell by just the events of the cutscene, as well as the fact that his wings are the same color as Pit's now that Palutena is doing it for both of them. The Pits can fly decently fast, but they're never shown being able to fly as fast as certainly Falco's R-Wing. Palutena herself is using Reflect Barrier, which is both her reflector move in Smash and a power in Kid Icarus Uprising, but in its home series, it's definitively not infallible. It can't block the Daybreak, which is the big ultimate blast in that game, so pretty easy to say that was going to do nothing. Palutena can teleport herself and teleport other characters. That seems to be a common characteristic among Kid Icarus deities. Teleport them where, though? The Kid Icarus world does certainly have other realms. You have Skyworld and you have the Underworld, but I think those are supposed to be more along the lines of physical locations this time around rather than alternate dimensions. You do literally physically travel to them. If I'm wrong about that, please let me know, but I couldn't find anything to contradict that. I mean, the Chaos Vortex exists, which is certainly an alternate dimension, but it's not one they're just casually strolling into. So with that in mind, I'm a little shaky on this one, but I think I'm gonna say Palutena was doomed, but it was still a bad attempt. If she'd taken just Pit and Dark Pit and teleported all of them away, they certainly would have survived longer than what ended up happening. The Pits, I mean, what else were they supposed to do? They were just kind of relying on Palutena. Snake. Well, as a cutscene beat, I love it. Great choice. As a character moment, you'd think you might be shooting at the Eldritch entity or something. I don't know. I mean, do I really need to say it? Diddy Kong and Rosalina. So Diddy Kong can survive in space, and his rocket barrels have enough force to knock celestial bodies out of orbit. I don't know what to tell you. I don't care how ridiculous it is. I don't care how over-the-top cartoony it's supposed to be interpreted as. It happens directly on screen. As far as I'm concerned, that's canon. Galeem still would have sniped him no matter what, but those are some strong rockets. Hell yeah, that was a good attempt. And then for Rosalina, I know some people are going to bring up the whole, cosmic goddess resetting the universe thing. I'm not so sure about that, honestly. First off, even if she is responsible for resetting the universe at the end of the original Mario Galaxy, it's not the kind of thing she can just snap her fingers and do. It takes place at a very specific event. And her being responsible for that at all is also kind of up in the air. It's described as part of a natural cycle, too. She gets big and she protects Mario and the gang, but exactly how powerful she is in Mario is left pretty open. She should certainly be able to survive in space if she made it there, I'll give her that. But personally, I don't really get the vibe that she could have done much more in this situation. So she goes alongside Diddy. You could also argue she's being held back by protecting Luma here. I'm pretty sure that's what's supposed to be happening, in which case you would have the airline principle again. But yeah, I think that we're doomed. And then we're down to our final 3 before Kirby takes off. So if you've been sitting here wondering what the hell the point of this video is, A, there's not really one, and B, it was partially inspired by an interesting short I saw from PK Beats. He mentioned because her up smash is invincible, there's a slim chance that her World of Light cutscene appearance is a reference to that. She's trying to make herself invincible. He then concludes by establishing that's probably nonsense, and yep, you know what though? Congrats on finding inner peace during the apocalypse. As for Duck Hunt, I know the dog's not doing much, but the duck is trying to lift him into the air. That's obviously not a thing in Duck Hunt, they never even kind of interact like that, but we can accept the Smash interpretation. In which case, yep, trying to get off the cliff was in fact the smartest choice they could have made. Which just leaves us with Villager, and I'll play it again. Okay, buddy. And there you have it, the World of Light escape attempt tier list. Now, when Sakurai was storyboarding this out, do I blame him for not having every character use 100% of their cannon strength at all times? No, not at all. This cutscene still kicks ass, and while there are a couple characters, particularly I would say Bayonetta, where I wish they were treated a little more fairly, it does very little to diminish exactly how much ass it kicks. Galim was always gonna win anyways, and while power scaling talk like this can be fun, Stan Lee has a great quote about where exactly you draw the line on it.
The person who'd win in a fight is the person that the scriptwriter wants to win.
And that'll do it for today. Thanks for watching, everyone, and let me know your thoughts. I always do my research for this kind of video, but if there's anything I got super wrong, let me know and I'll make a pinned comment. Likes and comments help grow videos on YouTube, so if you think it's warranted, appreciate it. You can check out more videos both here and on MockRock, and patrons and members get cool perks like early videos and Discord. Later, people.